Hello, this is Adam Wymore, and I'm at the University of New Hampshire, and I'm the PI on the Stream Elemental Cycling Working Group. Our central question is, under what environmental conditions are the concentrations of dissolved organic carbon and dissolved organic nitrogen correlated to the concentrations of nitrate and ammonia? And of course, as we look at the literature, we find a lot of inconsistencies in these carbon to nitrogen interactions. That includes both in the observational as well as the experimental work. What we're hoping here is that with the synthesis and working across broad environmental gradients and conditions, that we can begin to tease apart some of the complexities that drive the carbon-nitrogen interactions in flowing waters. So what we've done to date is we've synthesized a lot of the stream chemistry data available through the LTER program, primarily focused on carbon and nitrogen, but we've also included other nutrients, base cations, for example, a lot of other physiochemical parameters. What's really important to note here is I think the synthesis at the LTR through the LTR program has been really inspirational, as members of the working group have now donated over 10 additional data sets. So what the synthesis now represents is a collaboration among LTER, with the Arctic Grow Program, Critical Zone Observatories, NOAA, the Finnish Environment Institute, and the Domain Project, which is a project in the UK looking at stream water quality. What we've been able to do through this synthesis is create one of the largest global collections of surface water chemistry to date. And what you're seeing in this figure is the global array of our sites, with each site plotted with its mean annual temperature and mean precipitation value. Superimposed on top of that is Whitaker's biome designations. And you can see that we have a really nice global coverage of the biomes across Earth's surface. And the synthesis is allowing us to look at carbon-nitrogen interactions in unprecedented and novel ways. Without getting into the nitty-gritty of this ternary plot here, what we're seeing here is how the composition of the total dissolved nitrogen pool changes with elevated DOC concentrations. So our working group and the participants are a diverse and accomplished group of people representing all different career stages, including early career faculty as myself. We're an international consortium of leaders across disciplines, and we have representatives from academia, governmental agencies, NGOs, and nonprofits. The first initial key finding I'd like to share comes from our first project here, which is examining the carbon-nitrogen stoichiometry of dissolved organic matter. This project alone incorporates over 48,000 samples and approximately 370 sites across that global array. And what you're seeing here in this linear regression is the first ever global scale examination of the relationship between concentrations of DOC and DON. You can see that there's indeed a strong, tight correlation. From this simple approach here, we're also able to begin teasing apart how concentrations change across latitudinal gradients. And for the first time, we can state that the global DOC-DON ratio is approximately 25, and that ratio is highly conserved across biomes, which is absolutely fascinating. Because of the nature of these data, we can, of course, scale down to the site level. And what you're seeing in this figure on the y-axis is the coefficient of determination describing that relationship between DOC and DON at the site level. So these are R-square values plotted on the y-axis, and you can see that we go from approximately an R-square of 0.85 all the way down to 0. So a tremendous amount of variation at the site level. And we can also see how elevated concentrations of dissolved inorganic nitrogen influence that relationship between dissolved organic carbon and dissolved organic nitrogen. I'd also like to briefly highlight here our second project, which is examining changes in concentrations of dissolved organic carbon over time. This is taking advantage of the time series nature of the data. This project is being led by Bianca Rodriguez Cardona, PhD candidate here at UNH. And what you're seeing in these 5 example figures on the y-axis are SEM slopes describing changes in DOC concentrations over time. A lot of different patterns you can see here, but what's particularly interesting is comparing Hubbard Brook, HBF here in the middle, to its neighbor LNP, which is the Lamprey River Hydrological Observatory here in southeastern New Hampshire, where we also have a long-term data record. What's really interesting is you can see that Hubbard Brook has positive changes down here in the Lamprey Basin. We see negative changes across all the watersheds. This is really interesting. Hubbard Brook and the Lamprey Basin are not that far away geographically. Similar climate, a lot of similar watershed state factors, yet we're seeing completely different responses in the White Mountains compared to the coastal floodplains. So some potential directions. Well, I think this is our work is informing a lot of large proposal development, looking at watershed controls on DOM stoichiometry, kind of a state factor approach, and then also feedbacks within the nitrogen cycle. Illustrated here by this adapted figure, originally from the Peterson et al. 2001 figure, but we've incorporated dissolved organic nitrogen into it and starting to think about those feedbacks within the cycle. And what the synthesis is helping us do is to think about stream nitrogen cycling in a more integrated framework. A very important direction moving forward. Products and outcomes to date, had multiple presentations at international meetings, receiving really positive feedback on the synthesis. We have multiple manuscripts in preparation, and we're just about ready to publish our first data set as a partner to our first manuscript that should be completed this fall. And then lastly, before I close, a special acknowledgement to the NC's informatics team, which has been instrumental in pulling together the synthesis, who's without their help, this would have been nearly impossible, especially Julian and Margot. So thank you for your time. I look forward to seeing many of you later this week.